Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome once again to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert, and this is a Q&A live. So if you ever dared to dream of asking me a question, your moment of glory has finally arrived. If you're seeing my beautiful face, you should see some kind of chat box somewhere in the vicinity, depending on what device you're watching this on. Get in the chat. If you are a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in the chat and ask me questions. That's what this is all about, and I will do my best to help you out. Anything about careers, anything about job search, anything about that kind of thing is all fair game. So welcome. I see Alpipal is here. Thank you, Alpipal, and I see 15 people are here. God, excuse me. We will get to the live questions in just a moment. The title of this stream is called Job Seekers Live, Fix Your Resume, Crush Your Interview, Get Hired. So this is episode number 95 of Honest HR Nitrous. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. That and anything you guys bring up. And as always, a special shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members. Membership has its privileges, and to all my Patreons, to my super thanks donors. Those are really cool to get, by the way. And to my viewers, thank you for being here. Okay, let's dive in. So Alpipal says, "Hi Bill, I got to go, but I was going to suggest that maybe wearing a different color suit in an all-white office and background might change the contrast." Are you saying that I have no taste? That this like gray, bland, stark, sterile corporate environment is not to your liking? Oh my God. I suppose I could wear like paisley, right? You know, they used to have those in the 70s, like the paisley shirts that like sounds like it feels like you're getting brain surgery as someone has taken their finger and placed it right into your visual cortex or something like that, and it just goes nuts. That's what the shirt looks like. So we could do that. But thank you for your opinion on that. Yes, you're right. Everything is gray, and I don't know if that's my trademark or it just shows that I'm extremely boring. But either way, it is what it is. Christine says, "Hi, Bill. It's great seeing you again. It's great hearing from you, Christine. Thank you for being here. Feel free to ask me whatever you want. You can ask me about my taste in shirts, apparently, and I won't shy away from getting into it with you." Here we go. The Master TV, the ET, Son of Man. Wow. Okay. Hey, it's good to be humble. You know, it's good to have a nice, humble title. Says, "Just got hired at Northrop. Thank you for the videos." You're absolutely welcome. Master TV, the ET, Son of Man. I'm glad that you got something out of my stuff there. So congratulations. And I've heard of Northrop, so that's really good. Tejas says, "Hello, Bill. How are you doing?" I'm doing great. I'm live. It's good to just hit that button saying go live. You have no idea what to say, what you're going to say. It's all good. See if you can commit career suicide by opening your mouth and just having stuff fall out. It's beautiful. Such a contrast to being a CEO. CEO is like the exact opposite. Everything you say has to be extremely guarded. You can never, ever, ever keep it real at all. And this apparently is almost the exact opposite of that. So that's really cool. Yeah, way to go, Christine. So, yeah, get in the chat. Let me know. There are 11 people here. Let me know what you guys, if you have any questions about resumes, interviews, careers, that kind of stuff. I'm actually debuting it's not really technically it's not a new live stream, but I haven't talked about it for a while. On Friday, we did something like 15 episodes of something on private equity. And that was kind of cool, but it wasn't super popular, so I figure we'll switch it up a little. And my core competency is talking about growing companies and things. So I've always wanted to talk about that on YouTube. Not as big demand for it, but I still like talking about that stuff. So we're going to do a live stream talking about that on Friday. So if you're interested in that, come back then. We're starting off with something very relatable to everybody. It's called "What Does a CEO Do?" So I figure we'll start there, and maybe end there, as the case may be. But we're going to make the attempt. Christine says, "I'm currently updating my resume, and I'm following your AI with my resume." Okay. Yeah. So when you update your resume, make sure that you are tailoring your resume to every single job that you apply to. So you have to send a different resume to every single job. It's going to be a tailored affair, right? You are going to make a custom version of your resume for everything you apply to. You kind of need to do this to get responses back. That's the reality. It's at least for workers. So for people at the worker level, that's kind of what you have to do. They're getting a tremendous amount of applicants applying to those positions, so they can afford to really be picky. And they basically want you to essentially present yourself like your whole career has been building up to that particular job, so that's the reality, whether rightly or wrongly, that's how it's working out, So make sure that you're doing that. So the key is to be able to use AI to rewrite your resume for every job. So understanding that is really helpful. And the more you do of it, the more efficient you will get in knowing like what the commands are, like the prompt, right? It basically, for most people, the way it's going to work is you're probably going to have a master resume where you have every single thing you've ever done, every little thing you could put on a resume. It's all in one master resume, right? And then what you do is you go to AI tools like ChatGPT and you enter your master resume and you say, "Here's my resume." And it says, "Okay." And then you paste in the job posting. Like you cut all the text, you copy all the text from the job posting, paste that into ChatGPT, and you say, "Here's the job I'm applying for." And it says, "Okay." And then you tell it, "Okay, I want you to make a custom version of the master resume I've just given you, right? That is specifically tailored to apply to this specific job I've just given you, right? And just optimize the resume for that particular job." So it'll remove some of the things that you've done that aren't relevant to this job. It'll reorder things. The more prominent stuff goes up front to the top. It'll elaborate on, the things you've done that are very relevant to it. It'll de-emphasize things that aren't like, the main things that they said they're looking for. And, it'll use their lingo, their terminology, so that it lines up with keywords and all that kind of stuff, right? And then that's what you send in. As I bump my mic. So it's going to be a variation of that sort of methodology. Will maximize the amount of callbacks and things you get when you're applying for posted jobs. Master TV says, "AI is great for resumes, but I have been using specific tasks and not generalized it works better." Okay. It helps you stand out from everybody else because they see your work ethic and being able to do things others haven't done. My resume is 3 pages long with 5 positions. Okay, well, that's not typical. So Master TV. So like the problem is everything works some of the time. I get people saying, "Well, I told them to F off and I got hired." It's like, yeah, okay, that may work sometimes, but most of the time that doesn't work. And so I would say, my opinion is that most of the time, a couple of the things you said here won't work. That's not what I would advise. Standing out from other people, that's a thing that they say that they want, but they don't actually want. Now, if you don't believe me, you want to stand out, you want to make an impression, go down there, take off your pants, tell them how you don't care what they think, and list a bunch of things that you've done that are not things that they've asked for, and see if that works. You'll stand out. I guarantee they'll remember you 20 years later, you know? But that's really not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is someone who matches the requirements for the job to a T. That's what they're looking for, right? You know, it's politically nice to say, oh yeah, we're looking for individuals, you know, and people that have character and people that have a personality. Yeah, that sounds nice. But is that what you guys actually observe? Do they reward you for having a personality, for standing out, having character? A lot of times they don't. They just want someone who will follow instructions, be productive, etc. You know? So, as a general rule, I would say that's not kind of what you should pursue. The strategy that is superior is to just be the best match to what they're looking for, right? Regardless of standing out. You know what I mean? Tejas says, is photo mandatory? Can it be reason of rejection? Yes and yes. Well, no and yes. It's not mandatory, but it's sort of, it amplifies. So if you put a photo, it can be the thing that distinguishes you and makes them want to call you back. It can also eliminate you. Yes, it could go both ways. It's not mandatory. Jace says, I got an initial recruiter screen coming up. I noticed the employer changed the salary range on the job description on the company's website. Should I bring this up during the call? Absolutely not. No. First of all, as a general rule, you don't want to talk about compensation because you always lose. It's always bad for you. What you want is ideally, in a perfect world, to get to the stage where they make you an offer, but they have not discussed salary with you. They have no idea what your salary history is. They have no idea what your salary expectations are. You want to keep it completely open. Okay? That would be the ideal case. Second thing, you don't want to take people to task over anything that's going to make them feel awkward, or it'll be like a tough question, because it's going to make them feel less warm fuzzies for you, right? You want every interaction you have with them to be pleasant and fun as much as possible. I know that's a tall order, but it's basically a competition as to who is the most likable. They tend to hire the most likable candidate. The one that they like the best, they hire. There you go. That's usually how this goes. So the more you sort of rake them over the coals about stuff, it's like, wait a minute, you said this and then you changed your story to this. What's up with that? You know, like that's not going to make them feel warm fuzzies about you. That's going to put them on the back foot and kind of have to defend themselves, right? It really doesn't matter. They can ask for whatever the hell they want. The only thing that matters in the end is that does that line up with what's acceptable to you, and vice versa. You know what I mean? Frederick says, problem will always be there, and with sincerity, those problems can be solved. Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good attitude. I don't know what that's in reference to, but I like the cut of your jib. Master TV says, LOL, I get the impressive resume, but usually from the older generation. Okay, good for you. Frederick says, it's like following yes and no kind of digital way. Okay. Christine says, I have a specific job in mind and Taylor making it. It's been about 13 years applying for a supervisor job. Okay. Frederick says, with all politics and strategies, you could get very stressed, at least me. Okay. Nobody's giving questions. They're just making statements, you know. Well, I do this. It's like, okay, great. Good on you. Changing lingo, etc. in customer care. Currently employed as a coordinator. Frederick, and so should they, every discussion they have with you should also be nice for me. Is that a question, or is that like I don't know what that means. Anyway, let me know what questions you guys have about anything, and I'll be happy to get into it. Norbert says, hello, would you approach the question about why you are no longer working for your previous employer? Yeah, that is a standard job interview question. The question is, why did you leave your last job? It's one of there's 10 standard job interview questions that you can usually expect they will ask you. It's quite likely they will ask you all of those. Okay, so that's one of them. So how would I approach it? Well, there's basically 3 basic situations why you could have left your last job. Either you were laid off, so it wasn't your decision to leave, you were laid off, without cause. So you didn't do anything wrong. They just laid you off because they were, going bankrupt or something. Number 2 is if you left voluntarily, right? You didn't get fired. They didn't kick you out, but you decided to voluntarily leave. Okay. And then the third possibility is that you were fired. You're terminated with cause, right? Where they said, get out, right? So those are kind of the 3 scenarios. If you were laid off, there's no harm in saying you were laid off, it's not your fault. Perfectly understandable. And if you were laid off with other people, they laid off a bunch of people all at once, I would say that because that's further evidence that there's nothing wrong with you as an employee, right? They just let everybody go, In the second scenario, if you left voluntarily, this is mostly okay to say. The only risk factor is that if you don't provide an explanation, okay, they can make the assumption that oh, you're the type of person that just leaves. If we were to hire you 3 months later, you might just leave. You're the person that leaves things. A principle that recruiters are taught is that past behavior predicts future behavior. That's what they're taught. That's something they have right up front in their mind when they're interviewing you, when they're asking you behavioral interview questions. It's the whole basis of behavioral interview questions, which are very popular. Right? They say, tell me about a time you did this in the past. And so you say how you handled it. Do they care about what you did in the past? No. They care about what you will do if they hire you, right? That's why they're asking. They are making the assumption that if you were put in a situation in the past and you behaved one way, then if we hire you and put you in that same situation, this is exactly what you will do. You will behave the same way as you did before, right? So the problem with that type of thinking is that if you left a job voluntarily before, they think oh, you're the type of person that leaves things. So if we hire you, then you might leave of your own accord, and we don't want that, So you have to give an explanation. You have to say well, the position changed over time, right? And it became something that I wasn't really interested in doing, and it changed completely from the job that I signed on for, or something like that. You have to give an explanation. So that's fine. But if you're in the third scenario where you were fired, you can hopefully see the problem with this because they believe that past behavior predicts future behavior. If you were fired before, you're probably going to get fired again. You're at a higher likelihood to be fired again, right? So you're a higher risk employee if they were to pick you. This is the problem, right? And also, you guys all know that sometimes you can get fired and it's not your fault. It's not you that screwed up, it's your boss or whatever. They were a terrible boss. They mismanaged everything. They made you the scapegoat for their own failings and they fired you, Or they put you in a no-win situation, right? Or there were political things going on and they just fired you. So we all know this, right? The problem is that if you go to a job interview and you have to admit that you were fired from your last job, that can get quite problematic because then they're biased against you. They think, oh, you're the type of person who gets fired. So no matter what else you say, you're now a high-risk candidate. So what I would say is if that's the situation you're in, first of all, don't admit you were fired. They don't have the right to that information, okay? They can ask, But once again, what you do with somebody else is none of their business, you know? In some places in the world, it's actually illegal to ask about that, but most places it isn't. So what I would say is I talk about maybe what led to the firing. Like, there was a difference of opinion. I felt that, you know, I signed on for just the job as it was. It spoke to my talent and my interest, but over time the job might have morphed, and you know, it became unrecognizable to the thing that I signed on for. It did not play to my talent or my interest. I didn't have any interest in doing that, and so I left. You know, and that's how I would say. And the magical phrase for talking about this is saying, I was ready to do more. That's the magical phrase. And then it also allows you to turn the discussion to this job and say, like, I was ready to do more. I wanted to do more of this, this, this. Oh, coincidentally, that describes this job. That's why I'm here. You know? So that's how I would answer that question. Okay? It's a long answer depending on what your situation is, but that's how I treat it. Okay, now this thing has been advancing on me. Let's see here. Where did we leave off? Let's see here. Frederick. So that was Norbert. So hopefully that makes sense, Norbert. Frederick says, we are supporting you. Good. I'm glad to hear that, Frederick. All those statements and things. So that's good. Melvin says, is it okay to accept a job that was outside your field of study, then return to your field of study after a while? It can be, yes. Is it always possible? No. So it depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on your profession. It depends on your industry. It depends on the economic conditions. There's a whole bunch of things. Now, if you want to get specific information on your situation, get on LinkedIn. Do people searches for people with your education, like, you know, look up your degree or whatever. Get specific situations for people with in your role, like, you know, look up your job title, right? Limit the people search to your hometown or your where you're living, your region or your city. And then just like see what, you know, are there people that have done this and this? You know, you like search for someone with both of those, right? And you might find a few individuals. Look at their profile. That kind of shows you, sort of like looking at their resume. It shows their career path. They went over here and did that, but then they came back and did this. If you find a lot of those, then it's obviously possible. If you can't find anyone who did that, that might suggest it may not be possible, right? So that's how you can get real world examples of very specific things. Frederick says, never talk bad about last job. Never talk bad about anything. Yeah. How do you deal with salary negotiation if they won't budge from the first offer? Well, there's several ways. I mean, first of all, it may not be possible. If their upper limit of what they're going to pay is, say, 12, and the lower limit of what you would ever possibly accept is 15, there is no zone of possible agreement, right? There's no price that, you know, will be acceptable to both parties, right? Some other elements is that the deal is a system. It isn't just like price. There's other things you can negotiate for. You could say, look, okay, if you won't budge on price, can you give me another 2 weeks vacation a year? And, you know, I would entertain that. You know, if you say yes, then I'll sign the offer and return it to you. If you say no, then, you know, I'll get back to you. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's just not possible. Other times, as I said, the deal is a system, and then other times it's just a matter of holding your ground. You know, the key to negotiation is understanding your position. So if you've honestly thought about it and you've decided that, like, this is the lowest amount of money I would ever possibly accept, and you stick to that, you know that, like, taking a job for less than that doesn't make any sense to you. You can't pay your bills with like less than that amount of money. You know what I mean? It's not a solution for you, you know? You know what I'm saying? So understanding your position and then sticking to it, that's the first step. The second step is being able to get multiple options. So if your only option is unemployment or take this job, you don't have a lot of choice there. You know what I mean? You don't have a lot of power to push back. Okay? But if you had, say, unemployment, this job, or this other offer you got last week, then you've got some choice. You've got some negotiating power. You could say, absolutely not. No, that's unacceptable. I can't take that because I've got another offer in my back pocket that pays more than that. Why would I take this? You know, I have an offer for this. I'm not going to give you the details on it, but all you need to know is that I have an offer for this. Can you match it? You need to match or exceed this. You know, it's just as simple as that. And then that gives you a bit of power. You don't have to take whatever they feel like paying you. You know, you have a bit of choice there. So that's the basics of negotiation. That's how you kind of push back against it. And also in a perfect world, you would not have given them information on your previous salary, your current salary, or your salary expectations. You know, they won't have got that out of you, right? If you've told them all of that, by the time they get to the offer stage and they make you an offer, then it's kind of hard to push back against it because you've given them, like, you know, it's almost like playing cards against somebody and then having shown them all your cards and then you're playing cards against them. You know, it's like, it's very hard to win. You know, they're not going to budge from the first offer if they know that in your current job, you were paid slightly less than that, you know? So anyway, it gets quite complex, but that's kind of the basics of it. Hopefully that makes sense. Norbert says, thanks for your answer. I think I know now how to handle this question better in the future. Good. Yeah, it's worth your time to, like, certainly the standard job interview questions, like learn all you can about how to answer, practice your answer, come up with an answer that works for you, and then rehearse it. And then it's on the tip of your mind when you get into these interviews. You don't have to think. You have an answer for, like, all these things. Sarah says, how much of your resume do they actually read? Should I keep it short and simple, no flashy language, selling myself? I don't like how you put selling yourself in quotes as if it's, like, not a real thing. It's a very real thing. You're basically telling them, look, this is why you should hire me and forget about all the other candidates. Okay? Forget about all of them. Tell them all to go home and hire me. And here's why, right? That's what your resume is there to do. And that's your sole purpose in a job interview. Okay? So it's a very real thing. You are selling yourself. Now, in terms of recruiters and in terms of, like, posted jobs, when they go to read your resume, you know, there's that thing that, you know, people have been saying for years where it's only a handful of seconds where they actually look at it, right? And they have to see things on there that they're looking for, right? So you know how this works. In the job posting, they'll have, like, a list of requirements. They'll say, we're looking for this, right? And, you know, you are basically regurgitating that. You're saying, well, you know, I have this, and this, right? You're speaking to the things that they said they were looking for. So when they look at your resume, they go, okay, that's good. Then they look at something else. Oh, yeah, okay, that's good too, right? But if they start seeing things that they're not asking for, ooh, you know, okay, can fly hot air balloons. Oh, okay, you know, did basket weaving with Peruvian natives and, you know, and in the Andes, or, you know, whatever. It's like, okay, they got things that I'm not looking for, you know. Then it's like, okay, next. Right? That's usually how it works. So these days, usually the resumes get read by the ATS system, right? They have like 800 resumes coming in. They're not going to look at 800 resumes. They'll let the applicant tracking system read them, scan them, rank them, and then they'll read the top few, right? So if they're bringing in, like, traditionally it was an average of 6 people they would bring in for interviews. That can vary. If they're doing video interviews, they'll do more than 6, maybe like 10. So they might read the first like top 20 resumes. I'm not a recruiter, so I don't know a great deal. It does vary quite a bit. Different recruiters have totally different habits. Even when you talk to recruiters and they say, well, I did this, it's like, okay, but other recruiters do it differently. So, there's a variation there. So I would say maybe the top 20 for sure, they're going to read, they're going to look at. Now, do they read the whole thing? No, they just look at it for like a few seconds. They look for certain key things. Oh yeah, okay, this one's good. Just to double check, the ATS is kind of, it didn't glitch or something. It pulled out some reasonable results, right? So for a human reading it, you want to make sure that the prominent things are prominent, If there's stuff you want them to see right off the hop, make it prominent, put it front and center, Don't use a ton of like weird columns and text boxes. Keep it very simple. That like old version of the resume that, people used to do like 30 years ago, that Times New Roman, like very simple, kind of resume for. That's back. We all thought that was gone for good. Unfortunately, it's back because it's simple formats like that the ATS systems can scan effectively. Hopefully that makes sense. Guy Incognito says, couldn't find any work at all in my IT field of study. It's not going to happen, but now other jobs consider me overqualified. I graduated about 5 years ago. Yeah, so Guy Incognito. So here's the deal. When you're in like university or college or trade school, whatever, doing like post-secondary education, everybody just assumes that like, oh, I'm on a career path, a career track, and I'm going to end up doing that exact thing. And for some people, absolutely, it does work out like that. But for a lot of people, it doesn't, for a variety of reasons. And you end up going off into some other thing. Now, that can be good or bad. Sometimes, you can't get work in your main field. There's not much else, so you're kind of forced to do something else. Other times, it's actually kind of a cool thing. What you realize is that, you went to school to do a certain thing, but when you come out of school, you realize like there's a lot more things out there in the real world that require your skills, a lot more things than you thought there was. So it turns out that there's this like whole other area over here where they could use your skills and they pay really good and they're in demand. That happened to me. I took engineering. You just assume the whole time that you're going to be working as an engineer. Well, I never worked as an engineer. I got hired, by a company that they were hiring people with engineering degrees, but not to do engineering. You were doing other technical things. So I went off and did that, and my career took another path. So, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot more things out there than there are programs in education. You know what I'm saying? So, sometimes it can be a really good thing. And the way to get a job is not about necessarily the exact skills you have. What you realize is that for the vast majority of jobs, you just need general skills, Now, if you've taken stuff in IT, that means you know a certain amount of math, a certain amount of like structured, orderly thinking, right? There's a lot of skills involved in that type of thinking if you're coding, right? Even within IT, like, you've got the development world and you've got the systems admin world, right? They're kind of two different worlds, right? Within IT, totally different, right? You know what I mean? And then it goes out further beyond IT. There's a lot of fields that require, like, you do almost like coding, but you're not developing software. You're developing algorithms, or you're programming software, you're programming devices. Think about like all the industrial automation world where you have like factories with conveyor belts and robotic arms and, systems like this. Well, you're not actually designing those systems, but the company buys like a bunch of equipment like that, and you're the one that has to set it up, or you're the one that has to reconfigure it. It requires IT. You're doing the same type of work, but you're not designing anything, And it turns out they pay big bucks for that, because if they can't find someone to set this stuff up, they can miss out on setting up a product line that makes them literally millions of dollars coming out of that factory every month. So if they can find someone to set it up well without much bugs, they'll pay you top dollar for that, you know? So there's all kinds of things out there. So don't be turned off by that necessarily. That's what I would say. If you want to know what's out there, go to Google, go to LinkedIn. I've kind of said this a bunch of times. And do a search, a people search, and type in your qualifications. So, you know, bachelor's of whatever or whatever certificate. Confine it to your hometown or whatever. And then the results will be individuals. Go look at their profiles. What industry are they're in? What type of work are they doing? You know? And you'll see that there's a lot of stuff out there, and it might give you ideas for what you're qualified for. And if you do find that interesting, you're looking at an example of someone who's done it. You can look at their career path, how they got into that. Did they get it right out of school, or did they like take 5 years of this first and then go into that, or, you know? So you can do a lot of research by looking that stuff up. Atasaka says, how should I guess, prepare for an internship interview for software engineering in Tokyo, Japan? Well, I can't speak to how you would do it in Tokyo, but like if someone said, Bill, like I want to get an internship, you know, how would I do it? What I would do is I would go and talk to the person in charge of internships face to face. And I wouldn't talk to some intermediary, some student counselor or something. I would talk to the head of internships, usually a professor or whatever, or senior administrator, right? Talk to them and say, like, you know, I'm interested in possibly putting in for an internship, but I don't know. What qualities in students tends to make students successful in internships? You know, if I can ask and see what they say. And they'll say, oh, you know, we care about people that, you know, are open-minded. We care about people that, you know, are, I don't know, they have a strong enthusiasm for that industry, or, you know, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And then do the thing I was just saying. Go on LinkedIn, go do searches for people in your hometown or your region that have gotten internships. So like enter in the name of your faculty or your degree or your school or whatever, and then say internship, and then look at the people results. These are people that got internships from your school, and look at what they have. You know, that might help. But talk to people there. That's how you find out about this stuff. This information exists inside people's heads right where you live. If you're in Tokyo, right, you know, software engineering, probably a lot of professors working at the university teaching software engineering and computer science or whatever, they'll know this. So you go talk to them and you ask them a bunch of questions, right? So learn how to do informational interviews and go and talk to those people, and they will, if you ask the right questions, they'll give you answers for everything. Guy Incognito says, Sarah, I saw you. Okay, so let's talking to Sarah. Master TV says, LOL, basket weaving. Yeah, you'd be surprised. You know, you gotta be worldly here. It's the basket weaving or the basket people. I'm not sure what I was talking about, but one of those. Sarah says, thank you, Bill and Guy Cognito. Sounds like Guy Incognito. Guy Cognito means you know who he is, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose, right? Sounds like I should keep it short and simple and tailor my resume to the job I'm applying for. Yes. Master TV says, development ops scripting. I'm not a software developer, just an architect. Started as administrator, then engineer. Now I do networking, develop ops, data center, cloud, blah, blah. Okay. Well, whatever you are, then, you know, look at that. The point is you can go sideways. It doesn't mean you're doomed to only do that for the rest of your life. I mean, IT is the poster child for like that, right? where before there were formal certifications, who were the people that worked in IT? There were people that came from everywhere. Hey, math, come and work as a computer programmer. And they're like, okay, right? Those are the founding people, right? So don't get too hung up. Like, I know you're trained for a very specific thing or whatever, but, opportunities come from different places, right? And including stuff that you will never have heard of before. You didn't even know that's a thing. Be open-minded to it. Guy Incognito says, talking to Adascata. Adasaka says, thanks a ton, but I'm a junior in computer science at University of Florida. Know like nothing about Tokyo. Someone says, hello, I was wondering if having a driver's license is crucial to get a job. Thank you. Well, it depends what job. If your job is to drive a truck, then yeah, it'll be pretty damn important. Adasaka says, if you're applying for a blue-collar job, it's a must. Well, once again, that's not necessarily true. It depends what we're talking about, right? There's a lot of people that go and get hired like as casual labor on construction sites, and they don't have to have a driver's license. It helps. It is a good thing, right? I think we can all agree on that. But is it absolutely necessary? No, not for a lot of things. Confidocene, should I remove my high school from my resume? Well, it depends what level you're at. Like if you have university or post-secondary education, then it might make sense, because the assumption is that if you have that, then yeah, you probably have high school, right? You're not going to be hired on the strength of something you did in high school when you've got like a university degree or whatever, So there comes a time when, yes, you would probably remove that. Lulu Lucia says, if recruiters assume past behavior is the best predictor of future performance, how can I position myself to secure interviews? What do you mean? Like, you're given an interview based on what you've done, right? That's what your resume is for. This is what I've done. Here's my work experience. Here's what I've done, right? When you get to a job interview, a huge percentage of the questions you're going to get are going to be behavioral questions. They're the questions to start with, like, tell me about a time you did this, right? And the entire point of those type of questions are, they want to know how you behave in certain situations. And if you've behaved a certain way in those situations before, they're assuming that that's how you will behave if they put you in those situations again, right? That's the logic. Now, you and I both know that that's not necessarily always true. People can grow, people can change. Just because you were in a situation before, you might have handled it poorly, you've since learned what you should do in that situation, and if it happened again, you would now handle it better, right? So, yes, we all know this. Unfortunately, what I'm saying is that recruiters are trained to, with this principle in mind. And that's why they ask you those questions. So any answer you give, you have to make sure that it's something you would do again, right? There's no issues with you telling your story about how you handled something, right? I mean, that's what your resume is about. You say, I did this, I did that, I did that. It's your work history, right? Like, the whole idea is that they're hiring you for something based on what you've done, right? Lulu says, unfortunately, my last 3 roles were short-lived due to unstable and unhealthy work environments. Okay. So you either can not include those, or you could just downplay that fact, right? You did do them. You were in those roles, right? And then you don't volunteer the fact that they didn't work out very well for you, right? And then if they ask you questions about that stuff, excuse me, if they ask you questions about that stuff in an interview, you then downplay the fact that it didn't work out very well, right? You focus on the positives. Master TV the ET says, if you work from home, then no, you don't need a license. Yeah, that makes sense. but don't necessarily assume that. They can ask for anything, no matter how ridiculous or unreasonable. Adasaka says, the setup at the back is splendid, almost movie-like office setting. Are you talking about this? That's my office. So, no, someone was complaining about the fact that I was wearing a white shirt with a gray background. It could be worse. I have like gray shirts. I could wear gray shirts that are like the same color as the wall, like right there, right? And then it really gets confusing. If you want to talk bland corporate kind of thing, you come to the right place. And thank you for the compliment there. I have impeccable taste. Confidacine says, how do I make the most out of my engineering university co-op program? Well, try and get an internship there. Like I'm assuming the co-op program is like the internship arm of your educational program, right? So you could do an internship for like, I don't know, a year or something. If you can do it, I would say go for it. Yeah, like go for it. It's a good opportunity. Because what happens is, like really it's the hidden gem for why you would take a lot of those educational programs. Because, first of all, if you do get an internship, okay, they may pay you a little money. I'm not sure if they do. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But first of all, you get work experience. Working in the internship, you've been placed inside a company that uses your skills that you're learning in school, right? There's several things. You could, first of all, make contacts within that industry. If you want to work in that industry, right, being on the inside of it is really cool. Because first of all, you have access to the people. You can see, like there are managers and bosses and stuff like that. You could go and meet them and talk to them. And, they have contacts at other companies that may be looking to hire someone like you, right? Okay. They can also write you letters of recommendation. While you're there, you could say, hey, you've been supervising me now for 3 months. Would you be okay? Would you be comfortable with writing me a short letter of recommendation that I could then take? Would you feel comfortable doing that? And a lot of people will say, sure. So you get that. That really helps you. They can be references for you. So instead of giving references like your mom or your dad or people, you can give industry related reference saying, this is my reference. They're a product manager at this company. I worked for them for 3 months. They don't seem to have an issue giving me a good reference, right? So there's networking opportunities, there's letters of recommendation, there's references, and there's industry experience. Like there's 4 things right off the hop for doing it. So if you can get an internship, go for it, And the other thing, of course, is that once you graduate, if you wanted to work at that company where you did your internship, you would probably be top of the pile. Like your resume would be there at the top of the pile, figuratively speaking. They would want to hire you first because they've already got a taste of who you are. They've already seen like what you're like as an employee. So when you go back to the people that were supervising you and, presumably it worked okay, they'd rather pick you than pick a stranger. Because a stranger could go both ways. They could be great or they could be terrible. You don't know. Whereas they've worked with you and they know you're good, so it's less risky for them to pick you. So there's a 5th advantage, you know what I mean? So get the, if you can do the co-op program, do it. Lulu Lucia says, the problem is that I am not getting any interviews. They probably see my resume with short-lived employments and pass on me before giving me the chance to explain. Okay, well, that's an assumption. They could also be rejecting you for a variety of other reasons too. So don't just necessarily make that assumption. Besides, you can't change that, right? Like you can't change your work experience. So if that is the reason, then that's harder to change. What's more likely is that they're passing on you because you are not indicating the things that they're looking for, right? So make sure that you're tailoring your resume to every job you apply for, right? And AI is the way to do that, right? We talked about that before. Very briefly, create a master resume of all the stuff you've ever done, right? And then when you need to apply for a job, go to like ChatGPT or whatever. Like go to ChatGPT, and in this prompt, right, you copy the entire job description. You say, this is here's the job description. I don't need a response, and then you just paste it in. It says, okay. And then you paste in your master resume. You copy the body of the text, you paste it in here, right? You say, here's my master resume, right? I don't need a response. It says, okay. And then you say, okay, write me a version of my resume that maximizes my fit for this role. So it'll take your master resume, it'll eliminate a few things, it'll reorder what's left, put the stuff that they're asking for like prominently at the top, use their lingo, use their terminology. They might elaborate or explain more of like the things that they said they were looking for, and so on, right? And then you take that, you kind of proofread it, make sure it looks okay, and then that's essentially what you send, right? Same with cover letters, same idea. Okay? Because what's usually happening on the other end is it's going to an applicant tracking software. So it's a computer reading it on the other end, and it's looking at like, how good of a fit you are, like mathematically, how many things have you said you have that they said they were looking for, and so on, right? So that's kind of the game that you're playing. So, so make sure you're following that type of process, okay? If you're just sending a generic resume like to every job you apply to, unfortunately, that doesn't really work that well anymore. That's, if you're not getting callbacks, that would be the first thing I would stop doing if that's what you're doing. Okay, where did I leave off here? Problems I'm not getting. So that was Lulu Lucia. Guy Cognito, off topic, but do you have legs? We have only seen you sitting. How do we know we can trust you? That's a good point, right? And I think it was the son of Christopher Reeve that famously, like Christopher Reeve played Superman, right? In the original Superman movie, at least for the Superman from like 1979, the really good Superman movie. His son went on TV and he was interviewed, and it was like one of these remote interviews at home. So the camera was angled like low, right? So you could see the guy sitting there in his underwear, right? On like national TV in the US or whatever, and everyone like laughed at him for a good couple of years after that. But then he sort of like laughed it off. He shrugged it off, and then he had like a successful career. So, it just goes to show you. But you raise a very good point, and it's so good that I don't think I've ever heard that before. But you don't know that I have legs. Only I know that. And you just have to make up your mind on what you want to believe, Lulu says, thank you very much for taking your time to answer your questions. You're welcome, Lulu. That's what I'm here for. That's why I do this. And selfishly, it allows me to kind of get a glimpse of the type of things that people are wondering, like it helps me make hopefully better YouTube videos, because I'm speaking to things that people actually want to know, and not the things that I think they want to know, which is probably out to lunch. Where are we here? Yeah, and those off-topic things are really good, actually. I like changing things up and talking about things out of left field. That's good. Master TV says, LOL, show us your legs. JK, this is probably an HR violation. Show us your legs. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's violating a good 2030 rule, something like that, but whatever. I can tell you that my socks are fantastic, so you'll just have to use your imagination there, as I'm sure you will. That's why people keep coming back to my channel. Ada Saka says, out of curiosity, how was your first job application and acceptance? I don't remember my first job application. I remember, my first job application would probably be like in high school. Like I did the high school or no, university. I did like the university summer jobs kind of thing. I worked a bunch of casual jobs. I painted a house. I worked in a circus for 2 weeks. That was really, really cool, actually. And they offered me like to take me on the road because it was like a traveling circus that was touring up and down Canada, maybe going into the States too. I'm not sure, but it was awesome. It was great. And they, I was hired to like set up their tent, right? Their big tent. They needed like casual labor for that. So, I applied for that, not really knowing what I was doing. And then I did the tent thing, and they asked for some people to stay on and help with the shows. So I had done some rock climbing in like a previous life in a sort of hard to believe kind of way when I actually had a six pack. And so they said, okay, great. We need someone to go up. They climb like the whatever you call it, like the thing, like a tower inside the tent. And then you go out and you grab the trapeze and you like tie it back after the act where they use the trapeze. And so I had to do that during the shows, like every show. And it was actually really cool. And then after 2 weeks or whatever it was, they offered to take me on the road. So I could have run away with the circus and I wouldn't be talking to you now, or maybe I would be, except that I'd be wearing a clown nose and one of those funny hats and some pom-poms. So my life could have gone a different way. And I think it would have been funner if I had done that. But yeah, so that was one of the first jobs I had. And I don't think I even had like a resume or something. I just sort of showed up, so that happens. Master TV says, they asked me if I was wearing pants in one of my interviews. Hopefully this is a virtual interview, right? If you show up and they're asking if you're wearing any pants, that might not be the best interview. It might have taken an unfortunate turn. I guess it depends on interviewing for what, because you never know. There's some things that you might not need pants for. Jace says, I have an interview coming up in about 30 minutes, and I'm a nervous wreck. Any last minute tips for this? Yes, Jace. It's probably coming up in about 10 minutes. I'm sorry I kept you waiting so much. Listen, Jace, you're awesome. You're going to do awesome. Okay. Just do your best. It's all good. These things, they're like 75% random chance. How it goes is 75% random chance. You're going to be fine. Okay. Remember, they hire people based on like stupid things like how likable you are and how you guys click. Just go in there and try to be friendly, try to, just kind of not be so, just relax, as much as is physically possible. And remember, you don't come across as nervous as you feel, okay? So just remember that. You're going to do fine. And best of luck to you. I hope you get this, I hope you have a good feeling about it. If worse comes to worse and you don't get it, something will come along very soon. So you're going to be fine, okay? Yeah, and what Master TV is saying there too. Adasaka says, top 3 and bottom 3 things one can make in an interview. Well, you could make me a sandwich. That would be my top 3. And the bottom 3 would be you can make like a tree and leave, that kind of thing. Are you talking about like things to do in an interview? Like what should you say or do? I did a video not too long ago called like, what was it called? Like don't say this or something, like all the things that you shouldn't say, in an interview. Check that out. It's got like an orange kind of thumbnail. I don't know if that helps. It probably doesn't. But check that out. You're welcome, Jace. Best of luck. Guy Incognito says, I come across as more nervous than I feel. It's a serious problem. Well, you know what? Guy Incognito, life is long. And, a lot of this stuff, with a little bit of practice, you'd be surprised how much you can improve and you can overcome things, Especially the nervous thing. If you want to overcome nerves, here's what you do, okay? You do mock interviews with a friend or family member. Get some family member, like if you have siblings or a spouse or, whatever, you know, or like a best friend or whatever, if you got roommates or whatever your situation is, get someone to give you a hand doing mock interviews. You say, listen, here's what we're going to do. You're going to help me. Okay. You're going to pretend to be the job interviewer and you're going to interview me for a job. This is all pretend. Okay. But we're going to do it seriously. And this is going to be practice for me. Okay. If you have 2 or 3 people that can help you do this, that's even better. Right. And what you do is you do 3 or 4 of these a day if you can. And within 2 weeks, you're going to kick ass. You're not going to be nervous. You'll have heard like every question under the sun. You tell these people, like, you go and figure out what questions you're going to ask. Go on the internet, whatever. Just you figure out what question it is. Or I could give you a list of questions if you'd prefer to do it. But, mix it up. And in 2 weeks, okay, that's like, if you did 3 to 4 interviews a day, that's like 30 to 40 interviews if you did like Monday to Friday for 2 weeks. Like 40 interviews. You are not going to be nearly as nervous when you go to a real job interview after that because you have so much practice. You've heard every question, right? You've made every rookie mistake there is. You'd be surprised how quickly you improve with practice. It's like anything else. It's like any sport or learning to play any musical instrument. You learn by rehearsing, by practicing. This is no different. It's actually not that big of a challenge. It's just that people expect themselves to be instantly good at it, and they're not. We need to work at public speaking. We need to work at interviewing and things like this. Okay, but within a very short period of time, you can amaze yourself at how much you improve. Okay, you won't come across as like nervous, especially if you do the thing where you like look up what's the right thing to say or the right thing to do and then practice that, like that's what really helps. Melvin St. Fleur says, good luck, Jace. Yes, I agree. Alan says, if you are in your 50s, how much job history do you put on your resume? Is it 15 or 20 years? Well, the jury's out on that one, Alan. What a lot of recruiters say is that they don't want things that are older than 10 years. That's what they say. Same with like in an interview, they don't want examples that are like older than 10 years. That's what I've heard. Now, that sounds all logical and everything, but you and I both know that that's like stupid because you might have done some shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, how can I put this? You've been around the block a few times. You've done a lot of things, and like saying that, oh yeah, I've been working for 40 years, but only the last 10 are valuable. It's like, that's silly. We all know that. Part of your value is that you have 40 years doing stuff. You've picked up a thing or two in that time. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say leave it off your resume, but what I would say is like really downplay it. Like if you're going to try and get the job based on stuff that's in the last 10 years, if at all possible. That's what you should shoot for. So on your resume, you could say like, I've done this, but the only things that you really provide a lot of detail for are within the last 10 years. That's what I would say. And then, Alan, hopefully you can also learn about the hidden job market. That's totally your friend and ally. You don't have to do any of this stupid crap when you get jobs on the hidden job market. You just talk to people, they instantly see your value, and then they hire you based on that. That's how you do it. So with any luck, you don't have to play this game. You don't have to worry about what you put on your resume because you're trying to reverse engineer how morons decide your value. You don't have to do any of that. Best of luck to you. If you do want to learn that stuff with me, I have that in this course. Check that out. But one way or another, that's what I would say. Tarek says, good day. Good day. I was let go from a position recently after about 6 months. That sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. It was a temp position for context. I was wondering if you have any advice for what job sectors would be wise to apply to. Nope. You don't need my advice for that. You don't need anyone's advice for that. Just go and see what's there and then learn about the hidden job market and act accordingly. It's not about like, where are their jobs? Oh, there's some over here. It's like, no, that's not what you do. Okay. Learn how to find all the posted jobs if that's what you're doing, and then learn how to put yourself forward for all the hidden jobs. And a great method that like anybody can do, especially introverts, is called direct outreach, if you've ever heard of this. Okay. Now, I've talked about that extensively on my channel. If you don't believe me, let's just do this, okay? I put ChatGPT up here because people don't take my word for things. So I'm not saying that ChatGPT is like the be all end all, because it's not, but it just gives it. I'm saying like, look, this is not coming from me. This is how many people do it. Here, okay, so. Tell me about the method of getting jobs called direct outreach. Okay, I reach out to hiring managers or employers using things like LinkedIn, and tell me about that method of jobs. Is that something that I should consider? My nice slow computer here. Okay, so this is what ChatGPT says. Okay, direct outreach is one of the most effective, but also one of the most underused job search methods. Okay, these are, I guess, all the advantages, how it's typically done, when it's worth considering. Okay, so just as an example, I'm just not going to beat this to death, but I'll just do it this way. Okay, so can you explain to me step by step how I would do direct outreach to get a job? I don't know what jobs are out there. I don't know what areas are in demand. I basically don't know anything about what's going on out in the job market. How would I do this step by step? Let's see what this thing says. And I'm doing this obviously to show you that like this is maybe a starting point for like whatever you do. Okay, like I don't need to use this to know what to do. I already know what to do. I've done it many times, and I started my own consulting company, basically doing this type of thing. This and informational interviews were the two methods I used to get a ton of consulting clients. I can do a lot of contract work. Come on, this is taking a little too much time. Anyway, hopefully that'll come back with something in a few minutes or less than a minute. But yeah, here we go, finally. Okay, so let's see if... Okay, so aim your search, build a target company list. Yeah, okay. Now, I've got videos doing like all these different pieces, by the way. Find the right people, okay, would be the boss. Prep tiny assets, what the hell does that mean? A value proposition, yeah, okay. They're making it a little bit complicated. You don't have to do any of this stuff. Here's some templates, like if you're reaching out to people, here's like what to say. If they connect, then say this. And then if you don't get that, then say this. So like the point is it's giving you a starting point. So you can try this stuff. My way of doing it, it's not nearly this complicated. Okay, so yeah, this is quite cumbersome, but Canadian etiquette. Well, that's gonna be the crown jewel, and that's gonna convince them to hire you. Just the fact that they suspect that you might be Canadian, instant like magic bullet. It separates the awkwardly feminine from the possibly Canadian, right? So check out that stuff. Informational interviews are an amazing way of doing this. A little bit more involved, but but direct outreach, for the amount of work it is, you can do this from your computer at home or even your phone. I've never tried doing it on a smartphone, but in theory, you could also do it from a smartphone. I would do it from a desktop computer, just for me, but okay. And what it's basically doing is you're looking at all the employers around you, okay, that have potential to hire someone like you with your qualifications and your experience. And you're reaching out to them and you're basically saying, hey, I'm here. I can do this. This is the problem I solve. If ever you're looking for someone like that, who could do that for you, let me know, because I live close by. I know about your company. I know you guys do great work in this area. I'd love to work for you or work with you, whatever. And now that's going to land in the lap of all these hiring managers. And most of them, just playing the odds, are not hiring right now. Okay. So most people won't respond. And some people may respond with a no. But some people are hiring right now for someone like you. So for those people, they've just realized they've got to hire someone like you. And before they get around to posting a job or seriously looking, your message lands right in their lap. And you're saying, hey, I'm here. I'm the person you're looking for. And they're thinking, hey, this person looks like they have potential. If they work out, then I can just hire them and get on with my life. And I don't have to look any further, So I'm going to talk to them first. That's the idea. Okay, so that's the basic principle. And this is how a lot of people get jobs. So check it out. I've got a lot of videos that talk about the pieces of this. If you want to kind of see what that looks like a little bit, there's actually a video linked in the description box for this live stream. I've put a few of my videos linked in there. One of them is called, what is it called? It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. That's what it's called. So look at the description box under this live stream. Look for that link for the video, How Successful People Get Jobs. Watch that. That shows you what direct outreach looks like, where I'm actually doing it instead of talking all about it. So that can really help you. Where did we leave off here? Adasaka says, have a good night, guys. It's 11 p.m. here in Istanbul, Turkey. Yeah, thank you for joining us today, Adasaka. You have a good night. Melvin says, good night. Right on. There are 31 people here. Thank you for being here. We've got some very intelligent questions and things so far. If you are wondering anything, especially to do with careers or job search, get in the chat, let me know, and I will try and answer your question, help you out. Since we've reached the end of the chat, for now, I just want to remind people, as you can see on your screen, I got several courses. I don't do career coaching. That's just not my thing. But I do have courses. So it's a much better bang for the buck. So instead of paying for the equivalent of 1 hour of talking to me or whatever, like it would cost you with a career coach, you get an entire course that covers many different things. The one that most people here, I'm sure, would be interested in is this one. If you're trying to find a job, this is all my advice in one place, in a logical order with templates and all this kind of stuff. And I talk about all the hidden job market stuff. And I sort of walk you through it. Here's what I recommend and how you do it and how I've done it and the results it's achieved. If you are looking for something a little bit higher level, check this out. This is basically a course that will improve your communication skills. It's called Write Like a Professional. It is about writing, but it's also about what to say, how to respond in different situations. So that really helps you be put forward as a candidate for promotion, for climbing the ladder and getting higher level jobs. So that can really help you there. As you climb the ladder, you get more and more senior kind of stuff with more and more responsibility. You have to tack on several things along the way other than technical skills. People management skills, financial skills, and communication skills are the big ones. So this is a course on those communication skills, the things you have to tack on. Everything that I learned that in terms of communication skills, going from a supervisor all the way up to a CEO, I put in that course. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Link in the description. And finally, check out this if you want to learn business. Business is the scientific study of how to make money. That's what it is. So if you want to learn that, that'll help you be more effective at your job. It'll help you manage money better. It'll help you make better business-related decisions in your life, like perhaps what jobs to go after and what to do in your job and things like this. So if you're interested in learning that, or you want to be like an entrepreneur, or you want to branch out from simply working as an employee your whole life, that stuff is extremely useful. For what it's worth, I have an MBA myself, so I created a course where basically it's like a self-study thing. You get a reading list, and you're not reading like books I've written or something. You're reading the actual textbooks, the things that they study in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program. You're getting the same content, and I provide videos that guide you through it. But basically you can get the books off Amazon for very cheap. Like we're talking like literally $5-10, to get like a slightly older edition. And then you just read it totally on your own terms, on your own schedule. So if you only want an overview, you could get that. If you want to go really in depth, you could do that too. If you only care about one or two topics within business, that's fine. You just take it and only study those one or two topics. It's totally flexible. It's totally, the knowledge is there, and it's the same material you would learn in business school that's actually valuable. And it's not like somebody's coffee table book, like telling you what to do. So if you're interested in that, check that out. All three of these, there's links in the description box. And I've done FAQ videos telling you all about the courses, so it's as transparent as possible. So check those out. Alan, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you for being here. Melvin says, I appreciate these lives as one of the people trying to get into the marketing field. Thank you. Yeah, and like, once again, marketing is extremely useful. It's basically the scientific study of how to make something popular, Like, you can't tell me that's not like extremely valuable, right? That's the source of value for pretty much every business, right? And they also are very interested in the world of like politics and other things, because it's like, if you want to get elected, you're trying to make yourself popular, and marketing is the scientific study of how to do that. So very, very useful. Tuggy Talks says, that's a very masculine name. That's good. So I'm joking, of course. Tuggy Talks says, thank you for your very informative videos. It's so good to see behind the curtain of the thinking processes of hiring managers. Yeah, there's so much BS surrounding this stuff because it's smoke and mirrors. It's an area of high uncertainty. Like what allows someone to get a good job? What allows someone to be valuable? These are incredibly interesting questions that everyone's interested in the answers, right? So there's a lot of people talking about this, and there's a lot of legitimate stuff out there, but there's also a lot of snake oil. There's a lot of people that they're saying stuff that's really not in your best interest. A lot of recruiters, not all of them, but a lot of them, there's quite a few that like they're giving advice on like how to do job interviews, how a candidate should do a job interview. And it's very self-serving. A lot of it that I've seen is very self-serving because they're advising you to play right into the traps that recruiters are setting for you, When they say like, what's your greatest weakness, or tell me about a time where, why did you leave your last job? Did you get fired? And then, they give advice and they say like, well, how to answer the weakness question and how to answer the what if I was fired question. And they say, oh, just be honest. The thing to do is to just be honest, because all we really want to know is that you're self-aware enough to have weaknesses. We're just checking for that, just to make sure you realize you have weaknesses and you're working on them, right? It's like BS. You say that answer in most job interviews, you just eliminate yourself. Right? They say, what is your weakness? And you say like, oh, well, where do I start? Number one, I'm a bad person. I hate everybody. Number two, I have to admit, when my boss isn't looking, I sneak in a nap, every once in a while, and I don't do what I'm supposed to because, quite frankly, it's too much work. I mean, hey, we're all human, right? And then you say this, and then like next thing you know, you've been eliminated because of what you said. You played right into their trap. And instead, the job goes to the person that didn't disclose any weaknesses when they were asked that question. It's like stupid crap like this. So I've seen a bunch of very self-serving stuff about this. But once again, don't take my word for any of this. You go make up your own mind. Go get your advice from a variety of sources. I encourage that. And then try stuff and see what rings true. That's the best way to learn. But thank you for your kind words, Tuggy Wars. I appreciate, or Tuggy Talks. Tuggy War, that's something else. Kind of a bit of a Freudian slip there. But thank you for saying that. Well, we're approaching the hour and a half mark. There are 21 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. If you do have any questions, please ask them now. I usually make these about an hour and a half, so if anyone has any last minute questions, please let me know, and I will do my best to help you out. This Friday, I am resuming my Friday live streams. I took a couple of weeks off there for kind of a summer break type thing, but I'm coming back, and I'm technically not debuting it because I did do it like a year and a half ago or something. But what I normally talk about, my core competency is about like how to grow companies and things. So I've always fantasized about doing that on YouTube. It's not nearly as popular a topic as like how to get a job. So I always kind of start these things and then I never really persist with it because it isn't in demand as much. But I'm doing a live stream on Friday talking about business leadership and management and stuff like that. So for people who have an interest in, becoming a manager or, leading like a business operation of some kind, managing people, all that kind of stuff. If you're interested in that, we're going to do a live stream where we talk about just that stuff. So hopefully if you're interested in that, you can join me on this Friday. Yeah, thank you, Tuggy Talks. Melvin says, you mentioned a sandwich earlier. What's your favorite sandwich? I don't know. I like a BLT. That's the thing I learned early on. If you go and you have like a lunch with somebody, how like managers and stuff, they go and they have lunch with various people and stuff, and you kind of have like conversations and stuff. Like what to order when you go for like a lunch in a restaurant in like a business kind of thing. Context. Sandwich. Get like a BLT. That's kind of the go-to thing for like a lot of these people. It's light. It's relatively cheap. It's relatively easy to eat. It's kind of hard to screw up a sandwich. So wherever you find yourself, whatever city, whatever restaurant or eating place you go to, you can usually get like some kind of sandwich, like a BLT or something. So if ever you're wondering that you want to do like a business lunch or something with somebody, what do you get? Do you order like ravioli or something? It's like, no, sandwich, preferably something with a little toothpick through it, right? You take out the toothpick before you eat it. Don't get the like toothpick through your tongue or something, but there you go. Just a little tidbit there. I remember learning that early on. Seeing what other kind of veterans do, they always order that. And if you keep eating like in restaurants and stuff, you could get really fat. That's never happened to me. So, I wouldn't know about that, but you get like some kind of sandwich type of fare and you don't have to worry about that, Double trouble. So there you go. And Bob's your uncle, as they say. I'd like to know how that expression originated. And the beauty of this information age, you guys can come along with me here. Okay, so the expression "Bob's your uncle." What's the etymology of that idiom? Let's see what this thing says. Bob's your uncle is British and Commonwealth, and there you have it. Or it's as simple as that. 1887. That's pretty precise. Oh, so it's like an actual person. Oh, this is the Bob. This is the Bob they're talking about. The third Marquis of Salisbury was the prime minister at the time. Okay. That's cool. I didn't know that. Modern usage. There we go. See parts of Canada. So you Americans, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. They don't say that in the States. Bob's your uncle, according to this. Okay, well, there you go. So I hope that you learned something with me today, even if it's just, the origin of Bob's your uncle. Now you know, hey, you stick with me, you pick up these kinds of things. It's like an added bonus. Yeah. Okay, well, that's probably where we end today. There are 23 people here. Thank you for being with me today. Hopefully you got something out of this. I am back on Friday. We're doing a live stream on leadership and management, if you're interested in that. If that's what you have ambitions doing maybe in your career. And we are doing another episode of this, Honest HR Nitrous, also on Friday. So if you have more questions, come back on Friday. Tuggy Talk says, I've seen quite a few of your videos and have watched several multiple times. Wow. Your advice, what are your weaknesses, was so helpful. Well, good. Thank you for giving me that feedback, and I'm glad it's useful. My YouTube channel was born out of, I went and did some teaching for about 5 years back in academia because I was asked to, and I said, sure, why not? I've never taught anything in my life, but whatever. And I noticed that the students were much more interested in learning answers to job interview questions than they were in the material I actually was given to teach them. So I was so sick and tired of answering the same questions over and over again. I decided to make videos of my answers and then just send the students to the videos. And that's how my YouTube channel was started. So there you go. That was the origin. Anyway, you guys take care. I will see you on Friday. Absolute best of luck. Always remember, you're awesome. You're highly valuable. You're highly employable. It's just a matter of connecting with the right employer who sees your value. That's all it is. Best of luck to you. I'll see you soon. Take care.